Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Links Golf Club podcast, a conversation show about our wonderful club and the world of golf. I'm Gregory, your host. And as always, I'm joined by my friends Cooper and Chris. Guys, how we doing today?
Doing well. Happy 2025. We're having a good time so far. Lots of golf to talk about here today. But doing well. Chris, good to see you.
Yeah. Happy New Year. Still saying it 9 days in.
It's
But,
too long. We've already established that's too much. You are past the statute of limitations for saying Happy New Year.
I've
we'll see.
switched
People
to
can
saying
jump into the comments and tell us
Happy
what they think.
2025 instead of Happy New Year. And then it's, perennial. Literally.
Yeah.
Larry David
Still
has already weighed on.
active
This
for
is a
360 more days.
this is a solved problem. It's a settled statute. There's no reason to relitigate this. It is over. We are looking forward. We've burned the ships. We're 9 days in, guys. It is we are like a full 2 percentage points through the year already. How the goals going so far? We feeling like we're making progress? We sticking to what we got to hold ourselves accountable. So do you feel like we've made progress? We slipped in any areas? How are we feeling?
I'm doing good on my end. A little, as happens over like the holidays, the winter, had some sickness going through the household, which has interrupted a little bit of the workout frequency, but all over, across the board, doing pretty well. We're only 9 days in, so if we aren't doing well at this point, we're in trouble.
It's never too late,
Never too late. Yeah, I had a killer leg day. Right now, I can barely feel my feet. So we're on track for that 1,000-pound goal. But we are off track for rounds played so far. The snow in the Northeast, the temperatures are bad. I'm just on Google Flights looking for golf courses to play in warmth wherever they may be.
Yeah, I mean, I think I shared a couple of my goals in the pod last week, but I think I have like something like 20 goals this year that I'm tracking, and it's ironic that the pace of all of my goals, I think, except for 3, is ahead of the pace for the year. But playing golf is one of the few that's off track. It's cold here in Nashville. We're supposed to get like 8 inches of snow tomorrow. It's an apocalypse. The city is melting down. There's no produce at the grocery store. So we're going to be bunkering down here, I think, for the next couple of days. But it's what Sims are made for. I have had 5 practice sessions on the Sim so far this year. And I think I'm willing to say I figured it out. Of course, that will be there forever, and I'll never unfigure it out. But yeah, I definitely I want to play an outside golf round. I haven't done so since before Christmas. All
on
right.
that note, enrolling on the stack system is part of the goal, trajectory, and trajectory continues upward. The chart is up and to the right. So feeling very good about that one. Like you guys, not playing any green grass golf, but the underlying metrics are trending positively. So that's good, which is great point to mention, everybody. We get awesome deals on stack system stuff. If you want to jump in on that over the winter, 10% off everything on their site with code LINKS, LINKS. You can always check out the benefit in Clubhouse. But that has been a bright spot of my winter, I will say, keeping me positive golf wise throughout the cold months.
Yeah. Not only does it swing faster, it also makes you better looking, which is a guarantee. So.
Absolutely. As long as you can hold on to it. Chris, do you keep your glove on outside? You do your glove with it when you're swinging?
I've been doing it inside. I've been going to the sim now, which is what, Greg's comment on the simulator stuff made me think of it. But yes, I have been using a glove, have not sent any clubs to the ceiling, unlike some folks I hear.
Yeah. Just a tip, wear your glove with the stack system. While you're at it, you can get the stack system and all of our other discounts benefits at the Clubhouse website. It's clubhouse.links.golf. Keep your profile up to date. Explore membership if you're not a member. You can post your scores in our winter league, which goes through the end of January. If you're out there playing on frozen tundra or green grass somewhere, and keep up to date with us on all of our socials. Links Golf Official on Instagram, Links DAO on X or Twitter. course, we're here on YouTube and all of your podcast locations, Apple and Spotify. Lots of big stuff coming this year. So stay up to date with us. But if you're here listening, you're doing a great job.
You can also see Coop's weekly TikTok video dances. So check that out as well.
It's news to me, Greg.
AI is a wonderful thing. Chris, tell us where else they can find the pod.
Yeah, well, Coop just mentioned some of the places. You can find it on Spotify now. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, but you can also find it wherever you get your podcasts. You subscribe via the RSS feed on any podcast player, as well as on YouTube. So make sure to check that out. We have widened the distribution of that recently, so you can basically find it anywhere, listen in the car, watch on your computer, all that stuff. Remember to subscribe, give it a like, give it a rating, add some comments wherever you are consuming this here podcast. And that's helpful for us. And, give us some feedback on what you think of the shows as we've been jumping in.
All right. Thanks, guys. So let's dive in. I think probably from the moment the second golf course in history was created, people have always been asking themselves, like, which of these two is better? It's a debate. It's after a round, you're always talking to other people about all the places you've played. And naturally it comes up, which of the courses do you like more? Which of the courses are higher quality? And eventually that then leads to lists, right? This is like golfers are pretty much the same as like, mid 2000s listicles from BuzzFeed. It's wonderful content, and it's stuff that golfers endlessly discuss. So today we're going to be diving into golf course ratings, what they actually are, why we all get so caught up in them, and where they might be missing the mark. Plus, we'll talk about a cool side project we've been working on called Punchbowl. It's a tool that lets you become your own golf course rater and discover the world's favorite courses. So let's start with just sort of an opening here. Guys, what's your general experience with rating systems? Sort of which ones have you heard about? Which ones do you look at? Just walk me through sort of your history with golf rating systems.
Yeah, I'll say on my part, I feel like I've spent a lot of time looking at rating systems over the past 3 years, because obviously we've been looking at golf courses to, purchase, to partner with, and all this stuff across the globe. And so that naturally, means I'm kind of trying to suss out the quality of places and, seeing how courses stack up and what leads to that and everything else. I've also learned a bit about kind of the sausage making process that goes into them, which is, kind of interesting. I think we'll talk about some of that today, but, definitely see, online and, you hear people discussing it on Twitter and on podcasts and everything. Whenever the ratings come out, that's like the Golf Digest rating, the golf.com Golf Magazine rating. I definitely spend a bunch of time like looking at top 100 golf courses.com to, check in or, see where various courses stand, which is, I think, a little more kind of crowdsource rating. You got Tom Doak's confidential guides, which are sitting on my bookshelf right there. Got 3 volumes right there. And you've got all there's a ton of different sources, right? I feel like I've looked at a lot of them over the past few years.
Yeah. What about you, Coop?
My entry point to course ratings was more of just like an SEO stumble when Googling various golf courses pre-links, right? I'd look up a course that my dad wanted to go play, or, I'd Google Fieldstone and see that it was, top 3 in Delaware, right? And that top 100 golfcourses.com site always came up, and you could see the best courses in a specific region or state, which I thought was really cool. And, I've had the luck before links to play something like Kiowa and not realize that it was, the Ocean Course is this prestigious top 100 kind of experience, just to know that it was really special, but not really in the context of the broader, I'd say, industry of golf course ratings, right? It's kind of a cottage industry. And now with links, there's so much more to it, like Chris said, where you can dive deep into these various systems and references to understand how these courses get on these lists. And it's a really fascinating kind of process. But also, as a golfer, there's so much information out there, so many conflicting sources, and it's hard to kind of know where to point to, or what to lean on for those references. But it's a wide world to explore.
For sure. I mean, I think there's probably like 4 that come to mind for me. I think you've mentioned both of you have mentioned most of these. There's Golf Digest, Top 100 Golf Courses, which is a more independent site. I tend to like that one quite a bit. Tom Doak's Confidential Guide, I definitely want to talk about. You mentioned that one, Chris, and then Golf Now's Customer Ratings. So I think what I'll use is sort of a metaphor to the food world, which I like a lot. And if you like restaurants, some of this stuff will make sense to you. To me, Golf Digest is like the Michelin Guide sort of level of ratings. There is undeniably a commercial component to all of this, the Cooper that you touched on. Like, if you get on one of these lists, even if it's a top 100 or top 200 or top 300 list in a state, that's going on the course's website. That's going to be a placard that's going to be in the clubhouse. And being a top 100 course is like having, 3 Michelin stars, right? So famously, like Michelin stars are, 1 is you should check it out. I'm paraphrasing here. 2 is you should take a detour, and 3, you should make a special trip. And so a top 100 golf course is a special trip. It's something that you will do once in your lifetime. Maybe most of them you won't. And then like kind of the top 200 is more of the like you should absolutely make a detour to play one of these courses, and then beyond that, it sort of ranges there. To me, top 100 courses.com is more of like a Zagat in that it's expanded a bit. It's a little bit more crowdsourced, but it still has a rigor and a methodology, and it's established a lot of trust. And so, like, one of the things we'll talk about a lot today is golf course ratings have to be trustworthy, right? That's a very important part of this, no matter what their methodology is. To me, Tom Doak's Confidential Guide, which maybe is my favorite of all of these, although it's like kind of the most incomplete. It's not like it covers every single golf course in the world, but it would be like if Thomas Keller wrote a scathing review about his peers' restaurants and published it. Tom Doak is an architect. He wrote about all of these courses, ranged them from a 0 to a 10, famously gave, the Castle course in St. Andrews a 0, saying basically it has absolutely no merit at all and you should avoid it at all costs. And then very few 10s, right? So these like, I think there's like under 20 of these very special golf courses around the world, but it's his personal rating. A couple of his colleagues are in that as well, but it's like few people with a very narrow band of what their taste is, articulating that to the world. And then Golf Now's customer ratings are like Yelp, right? Anyone can leave a review. It's a 5-star rating. So you get all of these different ranges in the industry. I think for y'all, which of these do you use the most? Do you trust the most? Do you like the most? Which of these factor into when you're actually deciding to plan a trip or to play a golf course? Which of these do you trust the most?
Yeah, I mean, I personally love Confidential Guide, Tom Doak's stuff, but it is, I mean, like you said, it's limited. Also, the majority of it was done like before I was born.
Yep.
Like a lot of it was done like 30, 40 years ago. I looked at my home course is in there. The rating, I think, was literally from like 1982. It's like, well, how relevant is that to me? Like, very interesting to read and like get a sense of the brilliant golf architecture mind's assessment of various courses or whatever. But it's not going to be necessarily helpful for every course that you're going on a trip and you want to figure out what you want to play or whatever, right? For some of it, but not for all of it. And it's maybe more useful as kind of an artifact or piece of entertainment. But my go-to beyond that's definitely top100golfcourses.com just because of the breadth. And I do like the more crowdsourced nature of it. Obviously, like the Golf Digest list, the golf.com list, those are great. They also kind of just touch the tip of the iceberg. And I think, a lot of folks have talked about this, just kind of the process that goes into those. But I do think a lot of those tend to be like, it's the same courses at the top. And then the other ones filter in. If a course that's like in the 100 to 200 range gets a renovation, pops into the top 100, then it slowly works its way down, it kind of loses interest. And then, there's this constant cycling, which is useful to have to kind of know how people are feeling about it. But at the same time, it's like, maybe not as useful day to day. So, I find myself, more using just the easy access top 100 golfcourses.com stuff just on a day-to-day basis, I would say.
Yeah, I concur with that. I have not checked out the confidential guide as much as I'd like to. So maybe Chris, I'll have to borrow one of those
should.
volumes from you sometime
So
and
prickly. I love it.
check those out. I look forward to the Golf Digest and golf.com reviews dropping. Like, it's a big day on golf Twitter. Everyone's kind of like, oh, look, this one moved up. I'm wearing my cricket club, Philadelphia Cricket Club, jumped back into the top 100 this year. So seeing those like official type of rankings, they have release days, and it's kind of like a big deal towards the end of each year. For just planning a trip, right? Google, pop in. I don't trust. Let's start with what I don't trust: the 5-star rating systems on Google, right? Like, that's probably at the bottom of my totem pole. Golf Now, again, like that, we're talking about that Yelp level of trust. I think top 100 is kind of the gold standard for that if I'm looking to plan a trip or something like that. I think, especially when you can break it down by state and say, hey, I'm going, with for boys trip to Myrtle Beach, like which courses should we hit? And then you can dive in and explore some of the best public gems as well, which is really cool. Because not all of us get to jump on some of those really exclusive private courses.
Yep.
It's a really good point on the 5-star ratings. Like, those have such limited use, like maybe helpful in finding duds,
Right.
the ones that have
Something's
like the
wrong
2-star
here.
rating or whatever. Yeah, but like, everything gets clumped into the 4 point something, and it's much less useful than any sort of stack rank, right? Like you said, like going on top 100 courses.com and seeing, okay, in this state, this one lines up in this, in this echelon of courses around it kind of thing. That's like way more useful to me than as a 4.1 instead of a 4.0 or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, we're definitely going to dissect some of the weaknesses of these, because I think, to your point, there's a lot of things they get right, a lot of things they get wrong, and some of that comes down to taste, and some of that comes down to personality. Let me just do a quick sort of, for people who aren't in the know, just high level sort of how these ranking systems work. In all cases, it's people ranking them, right? It's whether it's lots of people or one person in the case of Doak, who are evaluating these based on some specific criteria. The public ones, the open source sort of crowdsourced ones tend to have the least amount of criteria, because it's just people going in ranking from 1 to 5. Obviously, there are some editorial components, but for the most part, there's some published criteria that is meant to establish trust in the rating system, to ensure that people look at this list and there's transparency around what the raters are looking at. So, using Golf Digest as an example, there's 7 categories: so shot options, challenge, layout variety, distinctiveness, aesthetics, conditioning, character, and fun. And then a rater will go out, they'll rate each of those after they've played the course, or after they've seen I think they have to play it, but after they played the course, they rate it. And then there's an average of those 7 categories. They double shot options, add all that stuff together, and then stack rank the scoring across all of raters. There also has to be, I think, a minimum of 75 raters at a course for it to even be eligible for the stack ranking. So there is a sort of social science methodology to this, right? It's not like purely scientific, but they take it very seriously, because they know that once they lose trust in the rating system, people are going to pay attention to something else. Let's go into maybe more of a criteria of the, or criticism potentially of these existing methodologies. Where do you think they fall short for you, Chris? You mentioned a couple of things, but what are the limitations of the existing rating systems, and sort of how do you wish they worked instead?
Yeah, I mean, there's one just like kind of pretty straightforward one, which is most of them are very limited to the top of the top, the cream of the crop courses, right? Which is useful for figuring out what is the best in the world or the country or whatever. But obviously, less useful for your average golfer. Only a very select or limited set of folks is going to even get to play those courses that are at the top of the list anyways. So, useful for one thing, but maybe not useful for, kind of an everyday use case, which is definitely a limitation. I think it's interesting to see that, how different ratings differ and each one has their own bias. And, Golf Digest has a bigger panel, Golf Magazine or golf.com has a more limited panel. That panel is headed by like Brand Morissette, who's one of the writers in Confidential Guide, and there's all this overlap, and there's kind of like, there are architects themselves that are on the panels, and people wonder like, oh, well, how does that play in? People are biased, they like their own work, they don't like others' work, all that stuff. And I'm sure there's some kind of politicalness to the process, right? Like that's inherent in any of these things that have committees, and you have to do work to get on the committee or be a rater or whatever else, right? Like that's always going to come with some issues, right? It's unavoidable. It's just like a human thing. But that just leads to, I think to me, the biggest thing is like, well, how, for your everyday person who's trying to find better golf courses to play, like I think these systems tend to be a little lacking in that regard, right? I don't know. Would you guys agree, or what's your assessment?
To me, it's the best tool we have for the job, right? I mean, there's not some magic bullet, I think, that'll solve these. And I could definitely play the cynic and be like, well, these are all insiders rating just the top courses, and it's this very like elite exclusive group. But I'd also say that, the average person that I play public golf with in New Jersey shouldn't be in charge of ranking the top 100 golf courses in the world. There are some elements of experience and
forget about it.
yeah, I mean, Greg, I would trust, right? But there are some folks who
I like pitch and putt.
I think that you have to have some context, some experience with other great courses, dedicate some of your time to knowing some golf history to make these decisions or stack rank these.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some element of professionalism there that some of these lists I like, but there's also a desire to know, like, what do I, as a regular golf guy, will enjoy, right? There are some courses, I was talking about this with a Links member yesterday. Two were mentioned in Scotland, Carnoustie and Trump Aberdeen, where it's like, if you want to go get your butt kicked,
Mhm.
right? Like those would be good. They're highly, highly ranked courses. But for a regular golfer, you might not have a good time. You're going to spend a ton of money to get out there, and you're just going to get up. So knowing where that line is and like what's enjoyable and why you enjoy what you enjoy is a really interesting question. So those rating factors kind of come into play. It's like, oh, uniqueness is cool, but if it's impossible to play a golf shot on this course, then
What's the name of that meme that starts like it's a bell curve, and on one side it has like the drooling idiot, the other side it has what's that called? Does it have a name?
Left curve, right curve meme.
Left curve, right curves. You know what I'm talking about?
We'll throw the graphic up on
Yeah.
here for you.
I think a lot about that when I think about food, music, books, culture, right? And golf is culture, right? At the end of the day, especially now more than ever, you're seeing these layers and layers and layers of different types of tastes and philosophy, whether it be golf course architecture or, the clubhouse or merchandise or fashion. Like it's a culture now, right? And so I think about that a lot for, food. When I was younger, I ate a bunch of fast food because it was good, and I didn't appreciate food. I didn't have a vocabulary to talk or think about food. I didn't cook, whatever. And then I got to this point in the middle where I was like, it's only the, Michelin star, highly rated, sort of sophisticated fine dining restaurants that matter, because that's what I was hearing from the people who had taste that I didn't have, right? Because I had to consume taste to build my own taste. And then now at the end, it's like, now that I appreciate food more and I have a vocabulary to think about food and talk about it, I like Popeyes a lot. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think is like there's this evolution I think where these things are really important is that when you're getting started, the only way that you find out about new places is about reading about it or talking to people about it. And it's hard to scale the types of conversations and word of mouth tips you'll get from friends. And that's, I think, a great source of knowing about golf courses. But these lists do serve that purpose. It codifies this. These are the elite places that sort of set the tone and the standard for world golf, while allowing you then over time to play some of those courses, appreciate them, and start to decide what you like. So when I was younger, I'd played this like pitch and putt in my hometown. And then I started thinking a lot about golf courses and really wanting to play top 100 golf courses. And now, like, I'm probably happiest at Butler Pitch and Putt in Austin, Texas. Right. So, like, that's, I think the strength of these is it gives a language to understand what most consensus would be about great golf courses. I think where it falls short is in helping you understand what your personal taste is around golf courses and sort of building your own muscle, which is sort of a plug, no free ads, but like a plug to Jeff Shackelford's book, Golf Architecture for Normal People, because that book really gets at, don't try to understand how other people rate courses. Use your own framework to rate a golf course around, do you remember every hole? Would you play it every day? And would your dog like walking it? Right. And so that's sort of proxy for the property and how beautiful it is. And if you can start to do that and evaluate your own taste, I think that's where things get really exciting, because you start to find diamonds in the rough and appreciate places like, Cullen in Scotland, or, Cooper and I love Pound Ridge in New York. Like, there's all these courses that don't show up on these lists, but even if someone else might not agree with you that they're high quality, you think they are. All right. Anything else to add here?
Yeah,
Just experience commentary there.
Yeah, I was going to make a point on the kind of pace factor, or the kind of what's trendy and what's not factor, because you mentioned it. And I mean, I think that's a really good point. One of the things that I find interesting, or one of the kind of fun facts on the whole course rating thing, it's like, I was searching for the tweet and I haven't found it yet, but our buddy Mike Clayton, golf architect, tweeted at some point recently, just kind of I think it was the Golf Digest list from 1985, I want to say. It's one of the, I think it was one of the first years it came out, or maybe that was when they transitioned to like the kind of 100 greatest concept. But it's just hilarious to look back on, like, if I remember correctly, like National Golf Links of America, which today is like number 4 or 5 on most of the lists, like wasn't even in the top 50. And I think Crystal Downs was the other one, like wasn't even in the top 50, typically now rated like top 10 or top 20. But then you have all these other courses that are sitting in the top 50 that like no one's even heard of today, or like Muirfield Village, which is, a great golf course, but it's like, it was number 6 or something. Yeah, it's like people wouldn't think of it in that context today. And it's clearly just kind of how courses are perceived and what is trendy about them. I mean, some of these do, like, whatever they kind of aren't invested in over time, and so they do kind of fall apart a bit or under conditioned or whatever, and so they rightfully fall out of the list. But a lot of it clearly is just taste.
Yep.
And what the tastemakers say is valuable and what is not. And you can even see it in like the Golf Digest categories and how they do the ratings for all their raters. Is like, I think, I forget exactly what they are, but like back in the 80s or whenever that rating came out, a much higher weight was given to basically how hard is it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they term it like the top 100 greatest courses, but it's like a lot of it is given to kind of challenge for pro versus like interest playing as an everyday golfer, versus now a lot more is given to kind of strategic and architectural nature, or even just like the aesthetics, the beauty of the site, all that stuff playing a lot more versus just the challenge. And I think you see that trend in golf architecture generally, right? Like the kind of RTJ open doctor style, in the 70s, 90s, or is basically just like make everything harder, more penal and, all that stuff, versus today it's flipped much more to the other side, where it's, more about strategic, more about aesthetics. I think the whole like kind of golf Twitter and golf Instagram, existence plays into that too, right? Like what courses look good when they're being shared, those will naturally end up, floating up the list because people see them and see that they're beautiful and, therefore rank them higher, and that whole factor. But, it's interesting to see how that changes over time, and like, it's not a fixed thing, right? And that's also part of the fun of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's to me, you just touched on, I think, and Coop, I'll let you add if you have anything, but you just touched on, I think, a good segue into the next segment about Punchbowl, because I think the most annoying thing about any of these lists is that it develops this sort of cabal of excellence that you can't disagree with based on personal preference. And this happens in food, it happens in music, it happens in movies. Like, I probably all of us have felt like extremely judged from some musician or movie that we really like, that this sort of not Illuminati, whatever, the intelligentsia, like, doesn't say is good. And you'll find yourself in arguments with people about it. And you can tell that the only reason why they believe that is because they've listened to someone else's opinion or it's some consensus, right? And that's fine. We've already talked about, like, that plays a role in developing taste. But I do think part of what's really annoying about it is, you mentioned like the RTJ thing, like, you can still have fun playing RTJ courses, and you shouldn't be judged for enjoying some of them if you can defend your own taste about what you like, right? You shouldn't also just be like, yeah, I played this course, it was amazing, and move on. You should think about it a little bit, but you shouldn't feel bad for enjoying things that other people don't enjoy. And I think that's my worry about some of these courses, is it creates this like very stark distinction between what's good and what's dog shit. And if you like one of the things that's dog shit, then you'll be made fun of. And I don't like that. Cooper, anything else to add before we get over to Punchbowl?
I concur on all of those points. You guys are spot on. It's my
Tip my cap to you, sir. All right, so let's talk about Punchbowl. Two of you have used it. It's been live and testing. It's only in test flight. We'll talk about how to download it and test it, but it's very much a side project. We've been, it has some rough edges. We're really just focused on collecting a lot of data. Can you guys just sort of explain how it works? Let the listener, the viewer who hasn't used it, just sort of explain what the use of it is.
Sure. Punchbowl is a really cool user-generated content app around rating golf courses. So before, when I said, you might not necessarily want the random guy you played your public foursome with to rate your courses, this makes that possible, along with all of the other golfers on the planet, right? Everybody from top raters, links members, general public can go on and they can post a golf course that they played, and then they can stack rank the various golf courses against each other to generate their top lists. The mechanism, I won't steal Greg's thunder for how all of that works, is really cool. He'll get into that in a second. But the best part is that you can, keep track of all the golf courses you played in a simple, convenient app, which is something that I didn't have a way to do. And then you can share your lists and view other people's lists really simply and easily. And also look at the totality of Punchbowl's rating system to see the top courses that everyone on Punchbowl has rated, and then generate a wish list. So you can see which courses you want to play, add them to a list, and then you can plan your trips or your next golf adventure around it. So it's really easy to use. It has its own Twitter Punchbowl app, and you can download it on test flight. Encourage you to go do that if you want to take a pause before digging into the rest, rate a couple of courses, and come back. It's a really fun way to spend an afternoon punching in all the golf courses that you've ever played. And then, going from there, there's a lot more to do with exploring and generating your wish list. But Greg, tell us a little bit about how you came up with the idea for this type of rating system.
Yeah, so we talked about so far today, I've always been interested in this distinction between favorite and best, and they are very different, but the tension between them to me is always very interesting. So I was flying up to Buffalo for the Jim Kelly golf tournament. Shout out to that. It's a very fun time. Shooter McGavin shows up every year. Chris Berman's there. Played with Steve Tasker. Just hits the crap out of the ball. And we ended up playing Irondequoit Country Club. which I really, really enjoyed. And we got rained out after 9, and we're sitting in the patio, and we're talking with one of the members there. And him and my brother, who both of these folks are a little bit older than me. They've played a lot more golf courses than me. They are starting to talk about the courses they played. And as I'm observing, I'm sort of a wallflower in these kind of conversations, sitting there listening to them. It strikes me that one, they are kind of one-upping each other a little bit, which I found interesting. They're trying to kind of flex a little bit, but they're finding common ground and they're flexing because they both have played similarly, highly rated courses. They're definitely, without saying the rankings, they're sort of using the framework of the rankings to talk about the courses that they've played. But they also struggled to remember what golf courses they played. So they're pulling up notes. The other guy had a spreadsheet on his phone that he was pinching and zooming to try to see. They were looking at Gin. There just really wasn't a single way to do it. So as a product person, I was like, that's kind of interesting. I'm flying back to Buffalo. Let me, just see what I can do. On the first leg of the trip, as I was kind of planning it out, I was watching Social Network, and the David Fincher movie, one of the best movies of the century. I'm sure most of you have seen it and remember a scene where Mark Zuckerberg is creating this app called Face Smash. And what it is was, unfortunately, getting a bunch of pictures of women and comparing them together to see who liked more. Went incredibly viral. It was the first thing that he built. Well, I guess not the first thing, but it was the thing that immediately preceded Facebook, and then blah, blah, blah. There's a scene in the movie where Eduardo Saverin is called into the room, and they're writing the algorithm on the window, and he's like, Eduardo, I need my best friend. I need the algorithm. He writes the algorithm. What that algorithm is something called Elo, which it comes from chess, and it was sort of the second wave of being able to compare grandmasters. Originally, they had a system that looks very much kind of like the golf rating system. It was more like a stack ranking of wins and some qualitative measures. But with Elo was interesting is because it used, a fairly sophisticated algorithm to be able to both rank players based on their matchups. So when player A plays player B, the ranking should change, right? And there should be weighting on those matchups, but it should also affect everyone else who those players have played. And when all of that math shakes out, you should theoretically have something that's somewhat predictable. Like if you have a matchup between player A and player B based on the Elo system, who do we think should win? And then it also allows us to have a very dynamic rating system based on the actual play of the game. So I was like, that's pretty interesting. What if we had a Face Smash / Elo type kind of golf rating system? And that should solve, in my mind, the 1 to 5 stars are usually pretty bad. Most 1 to 5 stars, they end up either being very low or they end up being very high. Very few people rate in the middle because most people are just, they hated it or they loved it. This would allow people to just compare between two courses, and then if those matchups played out, the math would shake out for itself. So I built a prototype over the weekend using Cursor. It's a really cool development environment that integrates sort of AI chat into your code base, and put together a React app and played with it. I'm not a programmer, so I just put something together for fun, and then happened to mention it to our actual engineering team, Parker and Sean, the next Monday, and was like, hey, put this thing together. Thought it was pretty fun. They played with it a little bit, added them to the code base, and they're like, number one, this code is terrible. You are, not an engineer, and you should never try to write code again. But this idea is really fun. Despite all the crap in your code base, we found ourselves to be pretty addicted to playing with it. So we decided to have a hackathon. We spent a full day building an actual one that we could share with other people. We shared it with Chris and Cooper and Bez and Jim and other members of the team. And I'm looking at the data, and people were obsessed with it. I think Bez spent something 8 hours using it the first week, which is a product manager. That's a very good indication that we should continue building. So we spent a little bit more time on it. We put it into test flight, which is, it's not available in the App Store. You can't just go download it, but you can go to punchbowl.golf. And if you're on iOS, join the test flight. It's an easy process. You click 2 buttons, and then you can download it to your phone. You can test it, and you can give us feedback. So that was what was behind it. And I think what's been really interesting is, obviously it has its own limitations, but I think it does solve for a lot of the things that we've been talking about, which is how do we just get a better reflection of the current taste of people on what's favorite? We don't call it world's best golf courses for a reason. We call it world's favorite golf courses. Now, where, Golf Digest might have a private bias, this definitely has a public and accessibility bias, right? Like the courses in the top 10 global rankings are certainly the golf courses that most people have played, right? But the good news is that because it's software, we can do two things. We can really model out and detect any commercial bias, right? Those are things that we can look at with software. And we can also update the algorithm to fine tune it, which is really what we're testing now. Is we can, instead of having to go in and create a bunch of criteria and publish those criteria, we can just continue to tweak the algorithm until we feel like it meets the standard that we're trying to, which is obviously like a reflection of taste and favorites. So that's how it works. I mean, I don't know if you guys have any questions about it, but that's sort of the story behind it and why we're really excited about it for a lot of the reasons we've talked about so far today.
Yeah. And so the basic gist is you go in, you have a new course you want to rate, you say it's bad, good, or great, and then it puts you into a series of head-to-head matchups, right? It says, okay, you want to rate this course. I'm going to force you to say which one is better. Course A, the one you're rating, or course B, this other one that you played. And it cycles through that to say, okay, I'm basically, those are the chess matches from the ELO rating, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to force you to say which one's better. Head to head goes through a series of those and then creates your own personal rating and then creates like a global rating out of that, right? So like what, Greg, as you've gone through it or you have the team who've gone through it, like what's changed over time? Like I know there's gone through a bunch of iterations and there's new features and all that stuff. Like how has it evolved in the months that it's been alive?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of our principles has been, and I think this is like in a lot of products, is like you try to abstract away complexity and make it hard on the team and easy on the user. So we try to keep things very, very, very simple, and we've had a very, very high bar for adding new features because we want to get the core of it right. We have shipped 3 updates to the algorithm. The first one that we released, we needed just to see how things worked. I think one thing that was immediately clear is that there is an initial rating that happens when you tap that you've played a course. So you tap, I've played Spey Bay. Then you're given 3 options, which are just like, I forgot exactly what the copy is, but it's something like, I didn't like it at all. I thought it was okay, and I liked it a lot. That sets an initial LO score for that golf course. And then you're put into the matchups between other golf courses. So if you put, I didn't like it, you're going to start to get some similarly scored golf courses that you've already rated as matchups, right? So I said I didn't like it. I'm going to get a couple other ones I didn't like, and I'm going to then start to do the comparisons. And then it's going to start to find the right new score. Every matchup will update both of those courses' scores. And then at the end, once it's sort of achieved an equilibrium, it'll stop it in the right spot, update your list, and then update all the scores. So the second one was definitely around like the number of ratings that we thought were necessary to achieve like a consensus of where it should land. That was the first big update. You guys both used it at the beginning. It would give you like a couple of matchups and it just didn't feel right. The third one was definitely how to weight that initial scoring and how to weight the matchup impact. And I still don't think we're there yet. So that's the 3 that we've done so far. You both have noticed that, something doesn't quite end up where you thought it would. And sometimes that's just like, well, maybe you're full of shit. Like maybe this is actually what the software is saying. And some of that is just like, no, the algorithm is weighting things incorrectly. It definitely does weight golf courses that most people have played more highly, which makes sense from like a design standpoint, but I don't know if that is necessarily where we should land. So the more people use it, obviously the more feedback we get. And one of the things we're really looking at is, does this feel right? Which sounds like a stupid question to ask, but we're really trying to make it feel right. And there's a lot of the underlying algorithm updates that'll make that feel right. No one's ever like, there's never going to be 100% agreement on like, yeah, this is right. But we know it's not quite there yet. And we look at all of the data and people using it and we get the qualitative feedback from people, and that allows us to make the updates. But those have been the 3 so far. Other like features.
It's funny though, because I like that it it like forces you into some kind of circular logic, like you were talking about with like, people rank it high because it's ranked high, that kind of thing. Well, it doesn't feel right, or like it's a good thing. It helps you course correct, but at the same time, you don't want to go overboard on that, right? Because then you're like just kind of,
Yep.
You don't want to tweak the algo and the weighting such that you just end up with, okay, we need find value number one, and blah blah blah.
Yeah, I think there is one of the metrics that we look at is sort of different. I forgot exactly what we call it, but it's almost like outlierness. Is that we do believe if you compare our top 100 list of favorite courses with top 100 lists done by these publications we talked about, it shouldn't be a 0% similarity, but it shouldn't be 100% similarity. So a lot of the question is like, what should that similarity be? And there's a lot of like complexity around how we evaluate that, but obviously like we're editors of an algorithm, so like we're going to introduce our own personal biases into the development of that algorithm. We hope that reflects our users, but that is always a choice that we're making. But we don't think it should be exactly like, for the reason you said, Chris. We don't think it should be completely different because people probably will look at the list and be like, why is this course at the top of the list? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So if you're out there on Punchbowl and something feels a little weird or not perfect, let us know. Ping Greg. That's the kind of feedback we're looking for, right? Rank your courses, see how it feels, and that, like you said, qualitative, like specifically which courses, where you think something should be, or why a certain ranking doesn't feel right. My question for you, Greg, is what has been the biggest surprise, right? You've obviously read the Golf Digest and these top 100 rankings. Now being on the other side of actually, kind of architecting a list, what have you found the most surprising in that experience of courses that were higher than you expected, or decisions that you had to make in kind of building the app and experience?
It's a great question. I mean, I guess I'm surprised by just the use of it. Like when people use it, I'm surprised that something that I found to be very fun has been very fun to a lot of other people. Uh, I would say that I have like, average to hopefully above average product taste, but it's always really fun to be surprised when, you know, we put something out into the world and people are like, yeah, this is really, 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 really fun and this is really sticky. As far as the ratings go, I mean, a lot of the normal, like a lot of the courses that you would expect to be on a top 100 list or on this list, just sort of in a different order. Obviously, Spade Bay is number 11 currently on our list. But again, it's top 100 favorites. It doesn't necessarily mean what does the golf rating industrial complex believe is the top 100 golf courses. So I'm surprised to see it, but I'm not surprised it's there.
And that's mid renovation, like 2025. Couple the new putting green, a couple of bunkers changing, some new tee boxes. We could crack that top 10, man. I think it's possible.
Yeah, I agree. I'm surprised to see 3 Bandon courses in the top 5. Again, that comes back down to, beloved public courses are always gonna show up higher on the ranking list. And then the third thing I would say is I'm surprised that Butler Pitch and Putt isn't in the top 100 because I love Butler Pitch and Putt, but that's kind of a throwaway thing. I would say that I think even though we've talked about golf ratings and like the list is the shareable, rememberable thing, I do think it's like much more interesting to think about Punchbowl's ratings as a way to just sort of understand the 0 or the 1 of should I play this golf course, right? It's a signal into if you're going to Nashville and I have a Nashville list and you can create a list of like your courses that are in a certain area. My hope is that if you looked at my Nashville list, you would enjoy every single one of those golf courses. It doesn't necessarily matter the order of them, but like if you were dropped down into Nashville and you had to go get a tee time, my hope is that you would be very happy with my recommendations. Because I live in Nashville, I play these golf courses a bunch, and there's a list of the courses that I find to be the favorite. So there's a ton of that data that it's like, oh, this course isn't in the top 100, fine, but this is all sliced by state. It can be sliced by city. So you can search any of those things, and the result is going to give you interesting courses that you're probably going to enjoy playing, rather than looking at an entire list of courses and then trying to figure out, okay, this is a 4.2 rating, this is a 4.3 rating, but this one only has 2 raters, and this, like, it's really helpful just to start to get a sense of, like, what do other people like? And maybe I won't like it too, but it's probably likely that the consensus taste will be something that's enjoyable.
I do also like, as a user, how it forces you to rate things head to head, which inherently forces you to consider things or like think about the courses you're playing more than you might otherwise. So like when you get to very different styles of courses, or, you might need to rank like a 18-hole course versus a 9-hole course, or, a link style course from Scotland versus a Parkland course in the US or whatever. And it forces you to sit down and think, well, actually, which one do I like more? What do I want to, how do I think about going about this rating, which inherently forces you to think more deeply about, oh, this is what I like and don't like about golf courses. This is, what I really enjoyed about this specific one versus another one, and that type of thing, which is cool because it's, we're out there. We like to play golf. We like to experience new golf courses. It like kind of makes you get more into it, which is a really cool kind of side effect.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
One of the
Well,
things that, sorry, I was just going to add this too. I don't know if you all have thought this as well, but the other piece it forces you to do is ask the question, like, how are you making your ranking? Like, again, I do all these head to heads, like, what is it that you are ranking? And, I think we put a prompt in there, right? Like it says, what's your favorite course? Or, I think that's the kind of prompt it gives you when you're rating one, but that's qualitative, and, favorite can mean different things. And so it does force you into that question.
mhm.
Like, I'm curious. So for you guys, what is your question? Like, what are you rating off of?
Vibes, honestly, and, like, that's kind of the idea is, because of the way that the algorithm works, it doesn't it can't matter that all of us define that in different ways, right? It has to just let the math shake out. And so, yeah, sometimes it's each one is different. What did I eat that day? Did I like the sandwich in the clubhouse? Did I have a good time? Did I shoot a low score? Was it pretty? I'm definitely inconsistent in how I do it. Now, other people are more consistent, and my opinion is that's okay. Now we'll see if that's true, and we'll tweak the algorithm and whatever. But I think that's why we've tried to keep it so simple. Just, which one do you like more? Tap tap. Next one. Tap tap. And to your point, some people might think about it more. Some people might think about it less. But it should shake out, right? But I think for me, it's more and more as I get older. It's just, which one did I have a better time at? Which one was more memorable for me? And that could be who I played with, and there's definitely bias there. But I don't like playing challenging golf courses really anymore because I'm not that great of a golfer. So, like, I want to have a good time.
Yeah. I think, you know, vibes is a widely interpretable concept. A few of my top 10 I played before I turned 15, right? So like there's some sentimentality there, but also like Kiowa is much lower on my list than Bandon. I played both when I was about, 13 or 14, but it was raining sideways and 48 degrees at Kiowa when I played there. And the Canadians in front of us went home on like the fourth hole. It was like a miserable day out there. Still cracks my top 10 because it was an incredible course, but uh, the weather can have a huge impact, right, on how that experience goes. Um, but yeah, I mean, just I think the way I felt walking off the course, and the way I feel today looking back on it, if it was a long time ago, has more of an impact on me as a raider than which architectural influences and whole designs and types of history are associated with the course, which I think is definitely something that differentiates me from a panel of Golf Digest raiders.
Yeah.
Yeah, for my own ratings, what I've tended to do is just kind of like answer the question, if I could play a course tomorrow and kind of assume, whatever, put weather aside to assume it's like, it'll be nice weather and it's ideal day in the summer or whatever, which one would I go play? And specifically not including the food and the clubhouse and all that, like things specifically about the golf course, but that's just a choice, right? Like I could completely understand someone just saying like, no, I'm kind of rating the whole experience or whatever. But I just like, when I was doing the ratings, I made the decision, okay, I'm just talking golf course only, not any of the other ancillary stuff. And I try to the extent possible to not think about the exclusivity piece, right? So if I'm ranking like Pine Valley and, a public course down the road, I'm trying not to factor in, well, I'd go play Pine Valley because that's maybe the only chance I'll get. No, I'm trying to think like, no, if I had, I guess the question is kind of like, okay, if I had the ability to play these courses whenever I wanted to, I'm trying to think about like, how much do I enjoy playing the course? Which one would I really want to go play? I don't know. It's a tough thing though, right? There's a lot of subjectivity and different factors in there.
I like that model a lot. I like the way you're thinking about that. You did raise something that it's a feature request, maybe, is for a Punchbowl, a little corner, maybe a tab at the bottom, hot dog ratings. Like, I've been eating a whole bunch of glizzies the past couple of years playing golf, thinking deeply about, you know, delivery, grilled, boiled, consistency, toppings, at these various golf courses. I would love to separately from the course experience, the pure golf experience, get a kind of glizzy gobbler rating for these places.
Yeah, maybe
Glizzy
we can
Bowl.
fork it and just create, Glizzy Bowl, and have it just be focused on that. No, yeah, it's on the list. I think it's a great idea. Chris, one thing that you said, brought to mind when we played the Fields Golf Club in Georgia a couple weeks ago. One of the idea, and we played it in the winter, and it was like, it's such a well thought of, golf course by, the hipster golf scene, right? For good reason, for sure. But it was hard for me in the beginning to sort of see that. One, it was winter, and like whatever.
It was cold.
It was
It was
cold.
windy.
I was playing
Yeah.
with like a half set of rental clubs with no wedges. But one of the questions I asked you was like, how would you know this is good if you didn't know anything about it? And I think that in an ideal world, in a pure technology software world, I would want to be able to abstract away all of your expectations that surround these golf courses so you could just compare them based on, a similar framework that both of you have shared. And that's why we don't bring in, like, we could easily show like this course is ranked 10 in the world in Golf Digest and Tom Doak gave this a 7 or a 0. We deliberately don't show that stuff. Even though it might be valuable to know, we don't show it because we want you to make the decision. We want you to have no preconceived notion, because ideally, like, you show up to a golf course with completely fresh eyes and you just apply your own taste to it. So I still think that's like an interesting question that I hope that we can get better answers for. But that would make me very happy if we could approach just much more of, here's what you say. And then as software, we can figure out how to stack rank that. All right. So before we wrap up this, just quickly, I want you each to give me what are your top 5 courses in Punchbowl right now. And if you could also, so name the course and then also name the global rating. So it's like, my number 1 course is this, and here's what the global rating is, because I'm just curious about what the disparity is, because I have quite a bit of disparity on mine.
Cool. I'll go first. My number 1 course is Bandon Dunes, Pacific Dunes. It's number 2 on the global, so pretty close there. Second place is Bethpage Black. It's coming in at 8th on the global ranking. Number 3, Spey Bay, of course, coming in at 11 on the global ranking, but it's on my podium. There may be some sentimentality
Maybe just a
there
little
at
bit.
play, just a touch, because it's immediately followed by Royal Dornick, widely regarded as one of the top courses in the world. Number 3 on Punchbowl globally. And then number 5, edging out a couple of other gems, is Tobacco Road, which is coming in at 10th on the global ranking. Some recency bias probably at play there. Got to play it like right when Punchbowl came out, but definitely a unique and interesting course. Those are my 5.
Great. Chris, what about you?
Well, I didn't think about the fact that going into this is going to dox me for having played at these courses. So just haven't mentioned some of these, but so the top two on my list are number one, National Golf Links, and then number two, I had the once in a lifetime opportunity to play Augusta National last year. Which I haven't told anyone in the attempts to not sound like a jerk. And one of those guys on Twitter that's just talking about all the awesome courses.
Yeah, you tweeted a scorecard of it. People know.
And here I am publishing a podcast about it. How about that? But one of the things, it was funny. I think I spent maybe like 20 minutes staring at the Punchbowl app with the head-to-head of those two courses, thinking like, oh man, to the kind of point I was saying before, like, it made me think really, really hard about what am I actually rating, where it's very clearly like, obviously if someone like said, where do you want to go play tomorrow? Like in the reality of the world, I would say Augusta National. Like who wouldn't say Augusta National, right? It's like, and it's not just the golf course. It's all the experience around it. It's the history. It's the tournament. It's, it's all those things. But, in my like framework that I went through, it was like, okay, really just thinking about the course, throwing all the other stuff aside, what do I think is on the top? And I actually ranked, after 20 minutes of deliberation, ranked National Golf Links ahead, just so that I find it very, very enjoyable and just kind of unique, plus the setting, plus everything else. But so anyways, interestingly, those are my 1 and 2. Obviously, they're kind of rated very highly on the traditional lists. Today, they're number 23 and number 37 on the global ratings in Punchbowl, but that's clearly because of the the fewer people have rated them, and so they haven't kind of had the opportunity to climb the list in our algorithm, right? But that's something to clearly that's factoring. Now we have to figure out like how we like weight all of those things correctly to get what we think is like the right representation of all that stuff.
That's right.
But so those two on the top, Royal Dornick number 3, which is actually number 3 on the global list as well. And then my number 4 is North Berwick. I found so much fun to play last year. Thanks to a Links member for hosting me, John C. That was a blast. It's number 22 on the global list. And then Kingsley Club, where we had a signature event last year. Our buddy Mike DeVries's course is my number 5, and it looks like it's number 65 on the global list right now.
All right. So you got some outliers there. Yeah, I think this might make me psycho, but I do think for this to work based on its mission, that there should be at least a defensible amount of disparity between these top lists. Like even if 100 users played Augusta National, I would hope that it wouldn't be, it'll probably be in the top 10, but like I would hope that it wouldn't necessarily be always there. Like if it was 13, I think I'd be very happy with how the system was working. My top 5 is Sweetens Cove Golf Club. Absolutely biased there, but it's my favorite property on earth, let alone a golf property. I just feel very much at home there. And it's not just about the golf course, although the golf course is excellent. That you can find that in any hipster golf medium that you want. Royal Dornick is my number 2. Tobacco. Oh, sorry, I didn't say. So Sweetens Cove is 38th globally. And then Royal Dornick is 3 globally. It showed up on both of y'all's list too. Tobacco Road Golf Club, which was also on Coop's list, is my number 3. That shows up 10th. And that is a course that has actually changed my rating because I rated it originally, and then I went to play it a second time this year, and it actually went up. So that one of the cool things about this is it is dynamic. Each time you play, go in and re-rate. Cruden Bay Golf Club is my number 4, and then 5 is Bethpage Red. I've not played Bethpage Black, but I absolutely adored Bethpage Red. And that is easily my biggest disparity. It is 106 on the global rating, and it is my 5th course. So, yeah, each of ours are going to be different. Each person's rating is a little bit of a snowflake. And obviously, over time, we're going to learn more. The good thing about collecting a ton of data about, these ratings is we can look at it, we can analyze it, and we can make improvements to the algorithm, which then immediately improves everything at once, rather than us having to like publish a new standard and then go teach 150 people how to use that new standard, and then that that just takes a long time. Instead, we can tweak as we go, which is also why we haven't released it to the App Store, because we're still testing. So if you have enjoyed this conversation, you haven't used it yet, a lot of Links members have, but if you haven't yet, go to punchbowl.golf, and when you go there will be a link to join the test flight. You'll need to download the test flight app. It's an Apple app. It's very safe. It's connected to your Apple account. And then from there, you will be able to join the test flight group automatically and download the app to your phone, create an account, and go to town rating. So please do, if you haven't had a chance to, it very much helps, you use it for us to get the algorithm better. That's our first thing that we're really focused on testing, is just like, does this feel right? Secondly, though, certainly if you have complaints about the UI or features that you wish existed or features you'd want removed, definitely give us that feedback. You can do that in Discord. We have a testing channel there. So yeah, that does it for today's episode. And thanks everyone for taking the time to listen. Thanks Coop and Chris for taking the time to have this conversation about golf course ratings. It was very much top of mind when these ratings were released back in November, I think. I think we all listened to the No Laying Up episode and the Fried Golf episode. There was definitely like a moment, as Cooper mentioned earlier, on golf Twitter when these things dropped. But I'm glad that we're getting around to talking about it now. And yeah, if you have feedback, please leave it. If it's good or bad, leave it in Discord, leave it in the YouTube comments. We are trying to get better every single episode. If you have guest ideas or topic ideas, let us know. Coop, Chris, anything else you want to share or plug?
No, just make sure to check out the Clubhouse. Jump in if you haven't already, for all the great benefits that Links membership offers. And just again, go check out punchbowl.golf. We've had a ton of fun playing with this app. And as Greg mentioned, it gets better the more people use it. So go check it out if you haven't already.
Awesome. And the only thing I'll plug is if you have access to a top 10 private golf course and you need somebody to invite, hit up Chris. He's happy to go out and rate it for us on Punchbowl. But other than that, thanks for listening. Have a great week. We'll see you soon.
Absolutely wonderful. Thanks, guys. See y'all.
See y'all.